Some of the politicians in this country, and I have to say even those on the right, they want to say that culture wars don't matter. And the previous Prime Minister, he's not a Conservative, but he's certainly on the centre-right, Scott Morrison said, you know, I don't care about woke, woke doesn't matter. What would you say to that?
Well, it doesn't matter if you care about the culture war. The culture war cares about you. The culture war is about teaching your children to hate their own society. It's about teaching a false version of history in the UK, in America, here in Australia. It's about undermining the pillars of the West that have made it as successful as it is. And this is one of the things that I've been speaking with people about while I've been here in Australia, trying to say to people, look, you have a great country here, and if you don't need to take my word for it or your own word for it, just look at the direction of travel. People are coming from outside of Australia here. People are coming from outside of the United States to the United States and risking their lives in many cases. Likewise in the UK, likewise in Europe. And there's a reason for that. We have created very, very good societies that are good at creating safety and prosperity, which is the thing that human beings seem to care about. And let's remember how that happened. It happened because we have government by consent. It happened because we have freedom of expression that allows us to produce technological and scientific breakthroughs that are unparalleled around the world. And we have the ability to leverage those scientific developments and technological progress through the method of capitalism, whereby because we've created an incentive structure where you keep what you create instead of having it taken away from you by an authoritarian, corrupt government or a communist system or whatever else it might be, we have generation upon generation of entrepreneurs and scientific leaders who allow us to be prosperous and successful and safe. So let's not throw any of that in the bin. Let's not pretend, as people are now pretending, that freedom of expression is somehow a partisan issue. I grew up being someone on the left and with the understanding that one of the core principles and pillars of Western society is our freedom to speak our minds. And I feel that that is something that's been under threat. Look at, you know, what our children are being taught about capitalism. They're being taught that the idea of creating capital is bad. In the UK, we recently had a debate of whether a person was too rich to be Prime Minister. And it just seems to me that we're going in the wrong direction.
Talk to me about Islamism. I mean, how big a threat is that to the West? We watch here in Australia what's happening in the UK, particularly after October 7. We've certainly had some very troubling incidences here. But we've also seen what has happened. I mean, I use the past tense there in Belgium and France. I think they're very far gone. Do you reckon we have our eyes open on this issue?
Well, Islamism is a problem not only in the West, it's actually a problem in the Muslim world too. One of the things that's happened, and you see it show up in the scenes that we saw in Parliament in the UK a couple of weeks ago, is essentially we have imported the civil war that is raging within the Muslim world, where people who want a caliphate and who want Sharia law are fighting against people who want to live in nation states. And they're Muslims, they're socially conservative, but they have no intention of creating a tyrannical, authoritarian, religious, borderless society like the caliphate that some of these people want. And so what you saw in the scenes that we had in Parliament a couple of weeks ago is essentially that the Islamist tail is now wagging the Labour dog and is able to intimidate and threaten British parliamentarians into changing the rules by which they operate. So it's very dangerous. We obviously saw the horrific scenes after October 7th here, where I'm sitting not far from here in Sydney. And I think people need to be aware that we can welcome people from all over the world, Muslims and Christians and people of many faiths. But when there are extremists among them, we have to be very careful to protect not only ourselves, but actually the Muslim community in this country and in Britain and in America from the extremists who would, you know, very often when there's a terrorist attack that is committed by an Islamist happens, people say, well, Muslims are the biggest victims of terrorism. And it's true. And the reason is that these terrorists are extremists in that community who are killing their own people as well as the rest of us. So we've got to be very aware of this poison in our society, for sure.
Talk to me about the issue of trans women, transgender particularly, but it really targets women because it's at the expense of biological women. I know you've spoken out about it. It's a feature of the things I talk about here in Australia. And increasingly, women feel, I think